Good morning. What a glorious, warm, sunny day. The feeling of walking outside here is everything the opposite of the anxiety and the stress that this country is going through as we vote. I saw this meme this morning that said, America is in labor, and in 24 hours we're going to know if it's a boy or a girl. And everyone will tell you, if the other candidate wins, it's going to be so terrible. I'm protecting democracy. I'm protecting America. I'm protecting Israel. I'm protecting the borders. And the truth is that it's super important to vote. It's our obligation as Americans who have the privilege to live in this greatest country of freedom and love and kindness and generosity to cast a vote, no matter what. But at the same point, we have to remember the words of King Solomon in Mishlei. Leiv malachim v'sarim b'yad Hashem. The heart of rulers and kings are all in the hand of God. The world is not coming to an end. And no matter who wins, there's so much work to get done tomorrow to heal this country. You might be sad tomorrow, you might be happy. But at the end of the day, you have to remember that Almighty God dictates what happens. And I'll tell you something else. For us Jews, we're always pulled in the middle. Every candidate is lecturing us why we should never vote for the other. And it's a hard thing. We worry about Israel, and we've seen a tremendous rise in anti-Semitism. And besides that, we've seen that the more you go to the extremes in both parties, you see anti-Semitism, and you see Jewish hate. And there's no question that both of the candidates have associated themselves with people that are troubling for the Jewish community. But we have to remember, today in the morning I got up early and I went to study. And I was studying today's Chumash. And in the portion of today is when God tells Abraham to walk the breadth and the width of the land of Israel. And he says two things God tells him. God tells him, come outside and see the stars. He says, if you could count the stars, so too your children will not be able to be counted. Which implies that God asked him to try to count the stars. Did God think he was going to be able to count the zillions of stars that we have? Why did God just tell him, just as the stars can't be counted, so too you children won't be counted? Why did God tell him, go outside? And what was he expecting? Abraham to start counting. And the rabbis tell us that yes, when God told Abraham to start counting, Abraham did. Because ultimately that's the story of the Jewish people. Whatever we do the impossible. Things that look impossible and look daunting and look overwhelming, ultimately the Jewish people overcome it. And that's the truth of who we are. And what God was telling Abraham was, don't worry. It's daunting, it's impossible. We're so small, we're so few. So many people hate us. What's going to be? He says, Im tuchal lisper, just like you can't count the stars, and you tried, just as you tried, even though you knew you couldn't. The Jews will always try, and they will overcome all these obstacles and all these challenges. But then I read something else. God says your children will be like the sand of the earth. And Rashi gives two commentaries. The first commentary Rashi says is that just as sand is spread all over the world, so too the Jews will be scattered, which is the true story of our history. Rashi wrote this 1,000 years ago, but till today, we're scattered all over the world. Wherever you go to a place, you'll always find some Jews there. But then Rashi says something so powerful. He says, just like the world would have no trees and no produce without earth, so too the world can't survive without the Jewish people. And if you look at the history of the world, every single country that has expelled or hurt their Jews have fought for their strength. If it's looking at Spain in 1492, how powerful they were, today they're an afterthought. If you look at the Ottoman Empire, every single empire or country that tried to hurt the Jewish people fell from grace. And that's what God was telling Abraham. Don't worry. The world can't survive without the Jewish people. It might look bleak, but sometimes you have to have the deep faith in Almighty God. Years ago, every few years there's a Pew poll, And every time the Pew poll comes out, the Jews get worried. We look at our numbers, we're losing the youth, we're not growing the way we should. What's going to be the future of Judaism? And I remember once one of my friends, a colleague, a conservative rabbi, says to me, Rabbi, what's going to be? Did you see the numbers about young Jews? And I said to him, he says to me, I feel like I'm on a sinking ship. I'll never forget what I told him. I said, the ship is not sinking. It's been here for thousands of years and will continue to be here. The only question is, will you and I be on that ship? That's something we really need to think about. What are we doing to make sure that our children should be Jewishly engaged, should love Israel, should love their Judaism? Listen, the Jewish people will survive, no matter who gets elected. If it's Kamala or if it's Trump. I had this guy who came over to me and says, Rabbi, if Kamala gets elected, I'm leaving this country. And then he says, if Trump gets elected, I'm leaving this country. And then he looks at me and says, it has nothing to do with politics. I just like traveling. No matter who gets elected, the Jewish people will survive. And Israel will survive. What's about us? And it's interesting because lately in Shul, we've been making a tremendous effort to get young couples to come. And we've seen real fruits to our labor. And I'm not just talking about high holidays and for Shabbos dinners, but even on a regular Saturday morning, we've begun to get 10, 12 young couples with little children running around. And I think about this, how remarkable it is. They could be anywhere else. They could be sleeping, having coffee. Their kids could be watching Barney's or whatever else it may be. But yet they're coming to shul because they want to be Jewish and they want their kids to know who they are. And one father texted me on Sunday. He was holding the Torah and sitting because he did Haggadah. He raised the Torah. And he had his son on his other lap. And he texted me those moving things. He said to me, Rabbi, he said, being in shul, holding the Torah in one hand and having my son on my lap was the greatest and most spiritual thing that happened to me. That's the future of Judaism. And that's how we know it will continue. So my friends, go vote. But do it with the head high up. Be proud that you live in America, that you're able to vote. And also be confident that God knows best. And yes, you might be sad by the end of the night, but don't let it convince you that the future is not bright. God bless you. Sending much love. Happy